Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are exploring how companies approach procure to pay and why the concepts, process, and technical capabilities surrounding it have gained so much traction. Procure to pay, or P2P, typically covers AP processes, but that's only part of the story. My guests on this episode, Bob Monio of SignUp Software and Brendan Coffey of Mekorma, explain more about the business case for payment services working together with AP automation software and how that broader vision offers benefits like reduced fraud and improved cash management. SignUp Software is the sponsor of this episode, and I asked Bob and Brendan about procure to pay for companies looking to both better automate and optimize financial capabilities. We discussed cash management, CFO priorities, and the recently announced joint partnership between Mekorma and SignUp Software. All right, I am here with Bob Monio and Brendan Coffey. Hello to both of you. Maybe we can just start with some introductions. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you again, Jason. My name is Bob Monio, and I'm the Senior Director of Partners and Sales for the SMB Business Central Market here at SignUp Software. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, excellent. Great to have you. And Brendan, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Good to meet everybody. My name is Brendan Coffey. I'm the Director of Revenue here at Mekorma. I'm excited to talk with Jason and my buddy Bob about what we offer.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I just want to jump right into it then. You hear a lot today from vendors, from consultants, this view of business processes at sort of a high level, and procure to pay is one of those common and obviously very important sort of process views of the world. Why has it gained so much traction, Bob?
Well, procure to pay is an area of cash management, and helping an organization bring their spend under control is probably one of the most crucial things that companies are now starting to face. During the pandemic, cash was king, as we know, as was the cloud, and cash management could make or break a company. Now, with the new paradigm of the economy, many organizations felt, we're out of that now. Okay, we don't have to worry about that as much. That's not true. It is even more important today to do it. So organizations have to really watch their procurement processes. They need to manage their vendors tightly to make sure that they're working with the best vendors who can deliver the best product at the best price. And ultimately, then they can pass that down to their customers, because customers are becoming increasingly, as we know, very picky and very cost conscious about how they're spending. And inflation has driven things up as well. So naturally, that puts even more compression on what's going on. So the world of procure to pay, which many customers on the outside don't think about, but if you're on the inside, it is very, very, very hot when it comes to what's going on inside an organization. And there's a lot of focus on this, especially from the office of the CFO. And that CFO is looking at this as an area of an organizational component that needs to really help operate and contribute to the self-funding budget inside the company. So procure to pay, especially now from Microsoft Dynamics in the Business Central space and the Vision space, is a very, very big opportunity. And it's an area that we see companies coming to us right and left for discussion on this.
I mean, one of the things to me about framing things in terms of procure to pay is that there are different elements that you can then break it down into and focus on technology solutions for, and focus on process optimization for, and how to be strategic. And I wanted to start on the pay side, right? Because AP, really is on that pay side of procure to pay, but it's only part of the story. What other key elements, Bob, you're keeping with you here, is SignUp focused on when it comes to automation and management when it comes to AP?
Well, AP has been sort of our go-to-market. It's been our key baseline for years, going back to 2000. And we've been very successful with it, and we're known in the market for delivering best-of-breed solutions in the AP space. But there's a lot of other areas that the Office of the CFO really has to take on, and you were touching on something else, which is the order-to-cash space. And then, of course, there's record to report. But procure to pay, if you talk to a CFO today who's trying to determine where they're going to focus their automation dollars, they really look at procure to pay as, in some ways, still low-hanging fruit, primarily at the AP level. So they want a world-class AP solution that's going to help them address what they're doing with their payables function, making it as touchless as possible, meaning that as an invoice comes in, No one has to touch it. It can seamlessly roll through the system, and you even see bits of AI being added into the process to help that automation so that the vendor can get paid, and that constriction of that time that it takes for an invoice to go through and the cost that it means back to the business is also constricted. And that's a big savings back to the company. So today, that's an area that many organizations will go to first for their work. But what we've seen is that there's many other components to it. And if you follow what industry analysts say about this, they focus on the fact that if you're going to introduce anything in the area of procure to pay, you need to take into account a lot of other areas associated with it, which make it much more complete and secure for the organization. Fraud is a rampant thing out there today. And as you accelerate payments and you accelerate the work that you're doing with your vendors, you have to take into account what's happening from a fraud perspective. So if I go back 10 years, it was all about how can I get invoices into the system faster? And what can I do with OCR and fast character recognition to get things in? But today it's about making that system that you have from a procure to pay perspective intelligent, smart, and make it work for you as far as managing things that are going on. So again, less human touch involved. And that's probably also why, Jason, we have this fantastic relationship with the Mekorma team, is because in delivering end to end, you also have to address the electronic means and the check processing and the payment processing, because purchase to pay does comprise a number of different components, of which AP is one. We know travel and expense is another one, but the payment process is incredibly important. And I spoke earlier about the concept of fraud and security. Tying in a powerful payments process together with what you can do from an automation standpoint, as we've done with our product set, means that the CFO now has the perfect tool optimized for really managing their procure to pay environment. And I'm sure that Brendan would agree with me on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the circumstances that we just talked about are not necessarily lost on the CFOs of today. I think that what we have seen, though, is more of a trend towards trying to work through the full end-to-end process versus automating pieces and parts. I think there's two pieces that are part of that. One is simply the time spent on managing these processes. We cannot dilly-dally when it comes to getting these things done. And then the second one is going to be the visibility into actually how things are being processed from the initial, from the initial purchase piece all the way through payment. So having that end to end and being able to have that kind of one single solution is why Mekorma has partnered with Xflow to deliver that and be able to really further enhance the value of each solution.
That's really interesting. And if I could just ask a bit of a follow-up there, because it goes maybe in a little different direction than I was thinking, but, in the sense of maybe from the conversations you have with CFOs and controllers and other people really, really focused on these processes internally at an organization, that they are thinking holistically. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe viewing things holistically and how you actually approach bringing, planning for an actual technology solution to address what is a very holistic need? Do you ever hear that concern or that kind of a question of how to approach it?
We do. And oftentimes it really allows us then to separate away from the traditional technology discussion and really focus on the business change aspects of what they're doing. The process re-engineering, looking at their whole procure to pay cycle, what they do from a process standpoint, and how all the pieces tie together. Many times, CFOs, surprisingly enough, don't always understand all those working parts, but they know they need to be able to figure those out. And we help them do that. And we'll go through and you can identify specifically where bottlenecks are. You can identify how those improvements can be done. Again, I will always harken back to security and fraud management and other things as being increasingly key to the success of what you do. But with that lens applied, we help them go through holistically and really look at what ways that they can improve their procure to pay environment. And what that does is it ultimately drives that money back into the business, because that was all money that was being spent in a wasteful fashion. And CFOs and controllers are absolutely exuberant about what that means as far as how they're contributing back to the business. And it's something that as you look at it and as you step away from it, you realize, again, most people don't understand what's going on in that back room. But this is an area of immense concern for companies. And CFOs today have become probably one of the most critical chairs, in the CEO's office as they look at how they're going to take and leverage what they have and how they're going to automate. And then from there, how are they going to invest in growing the business? So Procure to Pay is one of those building blocks.
I guess going back to maybe something else that you both already mentioned, but what does, AP automation and payment services working together look like when it's done really well?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of pieces that are related to kind of that end-to-end solution when it comes to how it's done. I think that the aspects that we often hear about are vendor management, the invoice processing piece, like the Xflow team does, payment automation that we do, that the end-to-end piece is essentially allowing us to be able to tell the story and be able to have visibility from the very beginning of that process also all the way through the end. I think that one of the things that Bob mentioned is very true, is that the technology has sort of outpaced the thought process. And that particularly when you have a lot of things thrown at you from a functionality perspective, how do you actually tell the story to be able to understand what you're spending money on and how you're determining what that looks like? I think the fully integrated piece is something that is now a must-have when it comes to these capabilities. And so it should all be in a single solution, which is what Business Central and the partnership between Xflow and Mekorma enables.
Yeah. Let me just add something to what you just said, Brendan. And this is something that we look at very closely when we do partnerships, is the nuances of how we intersect and how we work within the context of Business Central, because it's that connective tissue, much like the connective tissue in the human body that bring together the parts so they can all work together in a seamless fashion to reach the desired end. And that is something that's really, really critical to us, and hence why we chose to work with your team at Mekorma and the connective tissue we have, because we're both built into Business Central. And to a Business Central user, and again, to the CFO, this is a great thing, because when we talk about the buyer personas, the IT department has a stake, of course, and so does the user group. And from their perspective, being in Business Central, seamlessly integrated, I oftentimes hear from customers where they say, "Hey, where is Xflow? Where is it there?" I'll say, "You're looking at it." And they're like, "No, I'm looking at Business Central." It's like, "No, you're looking at Xflow." And that's because we take advantage of that. Now, one thing that you asked about, Jason, is what does that end-to-end look like? Really what it means is that, you have your vendors established inside of Business Central. That's something that can be facilitated and we help with through that process of receiving the invoice, through the qualification of that invoice, the validation, the verification, the invoice traveling through to the point of either automatically being approved or having to go through an approval cycle. And then once it is approved and ready for payment, it goes into the payment piece. And at that point, Mekorma takes over and you can go ahead and make those payments. Once those payments are done, the system then updates Business Central accordingly. And all of those payments now are recorded. And you know that your vendors have been paid and the right vendors have been paid, which is a crucial thing today. So this system helps that CFO and their teams feel comfortable and confident that that's getting done.
All right, excellent. And I know that another element of this that we definitely wanted to touch on here is the cash management perspective of all of this. What are CFOs thinking about when it comes to the things they need to see in a solution for it to be something they want to invest in to actually improve Procure to Pay?
One of the things that we've always heard over the years, at least in my career, working in this environment over the last 20 plus years, is that customers, especially the CFOs, never really were able to get a handle on what was happening inside their system. They didn't have the scorecards. They didn't have the diagnostic tools that could tell them what was the health of their financial process system. And what we work to do is build that in and provide that in the context of Business Central. So a CFO can understand what's the heart rate, what's the heartbeat of what's going on, within my environment, and who are the, for example, vendors that are not working with us properly. How many POs am I receiving? All the various aspects of what's going on inside their environment for the Procure to Pay. they can check that. They know that. And that is something that's extremely important to them, because when they look to manage their cash position and be able to report back when they're sitting down with their other C-level executives and talking about something, for example, maybe an acquisition they want to do, maybe they've got something that's going on as far as a particular supplier, maybe there's some other things that are happening, they need to be able to look immediately and know exactly where they're at. Now, together with Business Central and together with other aspects of what we can do with Power BI, all of those tools are there. And that's a direct contributor to the success that a CFO is trying to ascertain as part of their growth.
Yeah, certainly. I think that looking at the way that process and technology has developed over the years, I think that one of the classic examples of cash management that we still see a shocking amount of today is a wet signature on a check. And for a lot of CFOs and controllers, that is still the benchmark for how to see that. And I think that as we think about newer technologies, being able to emerge and get ahead of that, things like digital approvals, being able to anticipate outflow, and then being able to have a virtual and digital way of looking at that instead of having to be physically in an office is a game changer still to this day. I think that the other piece of this is going to be related to electronic payments and alternative payment methods other than check. Right, in that sense that will allow for really a more real-time understanding of the cash that is within your ecosystem. I really enjoyed, Bob, your analogy of the heartbeat. I think that the circulatory system of an organization is a very apt analogy, and the CFO being kind of the custodian of that is very front of mind for, again, a lot of companies.
Absolutely. That is something that resonates whenever you speak or you talk to a C-level group about an investment in technology like this. And it's something that they want to know that you understand, but also that you can spend time at a philosophical level discussing the various things that they're encountering and how their systems can work for them in this space. Because automation done for the sake of automation it can be done poorly or it can be done exceptionally well. But automation done in context of business engineering and business process reengineering with the outlook that you're going to manage cash and that you're going to help them achieve that self-funding goal is where, we collectively, both with Mekorma, that's where we really drive. And that's where our success has been.
Well, Brendan, Bob, it's been great talking to both of you. And I really do love framing, as you were just saying there, Bob, these business process conversations mixed with technology are really, for me especially, it helps really sort of see things from different angles and understand how your teams are sort of bringing your solutions to market and what it really means for organizations. Thank you so much both for being here. Do you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I just want to add some points on why, if that's okay, because I think it's important to understand, yes, we're doing this, but we wouldn't do it if there wasn't a why. And the why right now is that, you're looking at about 65% of the CFOs that are out there right now are focusing on automation. And this is something that we see with a lot of the analysts who touch on this, such as Gartner and others. And these CFOs are struggling, they need help, and they want direction on where to go, and they want to do this automation. So the coming together of our firms in this fashion to deliver that end-to-end capability in the procure-to-pay space, for us is critical, okay, because it's something we've heard. We know they want it because they're always talking to us about it. So we're absolutely ecstatic about the fact that we can do it. But to a greater extent, this is not a situation of trying to find a home. The why is there. They want it. And really, it comes down to, being able to bring it across. And I think that, just saying, from a Business Central perspective, having that connective tissue has made this process easy to do, something that years ago would not be that easy to do.
Well, Bob, Brendan, thank you both so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Jason. Pleasure.
This has been another episode of the MSCW podcast. My thanks once again to Bob Monio of SignUp Software and Brendan Coffey of Mekorma. And this message from SignUp Software. For more information on how your organization can take advantage of the integrated procure-to-pay system discussed today, add payment processing to your AP environment, or if you'd like to discuss further the solutions offered by SignUp and Mekorma for D365, contact Bob Monio. You can reach him by email, bob.monio@signupsoftware.com, or by phone in the US at 612-293-8558. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.